Gilroy has one question or two, and then we're going to move to Dr. Edwards from High Prairie Medical Clinic. So, Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, this is what I get for passing the first time. They passed me the second time. But just a couple of concerns. I agree with the mayor and the Reeve. It's interesting, when I was in the Maritimes, and I've lived across Canada, my doctor was at one point chief of staff in El Salvador, came to Canada. Obviously, we would have been killed, so he had to come to Canada. And so he went through the training, and instead of MSI being in charge of him, which is the healthcare system for Nova Scotia, he was just under the direction of a licensed physician in his community who would sponsor him. And then he had all the rights, privileges, he had to do all the emergency, all that stuff, until he, in his case, had the quality of, we'll say, language skills that would allow people to fully understand him, and he could do the verbal medical test that you know all about. So just to let you know, and of course I am also, I get my stuff through the community health, so I'm trying to say I'm balanced for both here, okay? So I'm not picking on foreign trained doctors or that. I have had wonderful service that way too. But the other thing is interesting. At one point I had asked you, Dr. Worry, about could a person be part of that community health and wellness specialized team that we're talking about, 30, 40 people, I remember the multidiscipline team, and still work at a private clinic. And I thought you had said that that's a possibility. If they chose to be at that clinic, they could still work with that multidiscipline group. And then when you talked to just a few minutes ago, you dwelt more on the fact that they were going to be part of that one group. And it got me a little confused. So I'm trying to figure this out. Because if a person's given a choice and they have a subset skill set that is as an anesthesiologist or something like that, and they still want to be mainly a physician, but then take that as well as a subset for the C-section, things like that, it doesn't sound like they can be part of both clinics at the same time, if you know what I mean. They can't work as the overall team that's going to help our community and still be in private practice. It sounds like they'd be more tempted to be part of the community health and wellness team because it would be easier for them. If it works out that way, it doesn't sound like an even playing field to me.
So, you know, if you're referring, when you're saying they, and I was hearing again a physician with anesthesia. So if you're looking at the physician can absolutely choose in you know what clinic they want to work in. So for example, in High Prairie, do they want to work in the High Prairie Medical Clinic? Do they want to work in the Community Health and Wellness Clinic? Now again, there are certain things you'd have to agree to if you work in the Community Health and Wellness Clinic, right? And those are some of the principles that the team follows. But if you agreed with those, you could work in that location. But to your question specifically, can you be a GPA, a physician with anesthesia, work out of the High Prairie Medical Clinic,
or any other private,
or any other clinic in High Prairie, if another clinic arises, and go ahead and still have your patients access the interprofessional care? So like the chronic disease nurses, the dietitians, those team members, right, that are going to be based at the Community Health and Wellness Clinic, you know, at the hospital. So yes.
I was thinking the other way around. What if the community health and wellness people needed the anesthesiologist?
So sorry, if an AHS staff member needed...
No. The idea here is that if a person... See, when I look at the hospital, I look at it as something that's going to benefit the entire community.
Right.
I don't look at it as one group versus another group.
Right.
I look at it as, if I go in for emergency surgery, I don't care who puts me under, okay? And so if a person is working in the private clinic and they have the ability to do the anesthesiologist stuff, and you come into the hospital, would they have the same rights and privileges to consult with your other team, your 30 to 40 specialists, so that we can have one unified group, so we're we can have one big hospital as opposed to fractions trying to fight it out. Because I really want a united community here.
Right. So I think the easiest answer to your question is yes.
Okay, that ends our portion of the questions from only our council. Public gallery will still have a chance, but we would like to hear from the High Prairie Medical Clinic.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about a few things that are just a little bit off topic here with regards to recruitment. So I think there's some confusion, or maybe it's been cleared up now, about what doctors can come to each clinic. In High Prairie Medical Clinic, we can hire any physician who actually is already practicing in Alberta. That's where our pool comes from. We're not allowed to get from any other place, according to Alberta Health Services. Okay? So if we want to unethically steal a doctor from another clinic who is working in another clinic to come to our clinic, they can't interfere with that. Okay? What it means is we can only get physicians who are already practicing in Alberta to come to our clinic, to recruit them to our clinic. Whereas Alberta Health Services can recruit from around the world. So it's not an even playing field. All right. The other thing is, yes, we would like to have Canadian graduates come here. The reason why they don't come here is you have to work too hard in a rural town, and there's no amenities for the families here. That's the reason why they don't come to High Prairie. Do you know that Grand Prairie is considered a rural community with all their amenities, all their advantages? So they're considered a rural community, and so these rurally based or rurally trained physicians, family practitioners, that's where they go. Because they can have amenities, they can do their rural practice. That's why they don't come here. So the physicians that will come to a place like High Prairie are not going to be Canadian graduates. They're not going to be Alberta graduates. They're going to be from outside, someplace where they want to leave. As you said, that physician was going to get killed. That's why he wanted to leave there. And he will come here. He will be willing to work in a place that has no amenities, and you have to work really hard. He's willing to do that because the place he's coming from is not so nice. How many Alberta practicing physicians have come here? How many are in the health and wellness clinic? How many were practicing in Alberta who are now practicing in the health and wellness clinic? I don't think there's any there. Why? Because they don't come here. So we don't have an opportunity to get those physicians in High Prairie. And High Prairie Health, or the medical clinic, Dr. Laughlin and my clinic, that's all we can hire. We can recruit from them. So obviously there is a workforce plan. Dr. Worry says it's in progress. But as of July 14th, 2016, there's obviously some sort of plan here. And we would like to have a copy of that plan. And I'm sure the town and the community would like to have a copy of that plan. Because according to that plan, we could not hire this physician. And we would like to know why. And obviously that plan is going to tell us, because Dr. Laughlin and I have not been privy to this. We have not been given any opportunity to put in our desires. Last week, Alberta Health Services wanted to have a meeting planned for 7 o'clock in the morning this week, I think, to discuss it before this meeting. And of course, I'm not going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning to have a meeting to discuss that, just to say that, yes, we were consulted. So can we have a copy of the workforce plan as of this day? We know it's a progress. progressing, but we would like to have a copy of it right now, as of today, because obviously decisions are being made for that, according to that plan. And I don't know, would anyone else like to have that plan?
County would.
Yes,
We'd all like a copy.
yes. Can we have that plan, Dr. Worry?
Is that plan available, Dr. Ward?
So I don't have that plan
No,
in
not
front
with
of
you,
me.
but is
right?
it available for distribution?
But what I can tell you is, I mean, again, we have a plan that, again, we're actively looking to go ahead and update. Happy in particular when we meet with the High Prairie Medical Clinic to lay out, here is all the information we have. This is our starting point. Again, and I think that that's going to be an important conversation to have. But I
But
would
you
also
have
wanna-
made decisions already based on that plan, right? According to physician recruitment.
Yeah.
Yes, yes?
So I would want to be candid here. Are we currently, do we have a position posted for a family physician to come to High Prairie right now on drjobsalberta.com? No, we do not.
Okay, what we're asking though is the workforce plan that is out of date, because you're currently working on it, can we have a copy of the out of date plan?
Again, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm saying these are being developed provincially. Again, I can tell you, what are the constructs that we're using, what are the larger numbers we're using, and I can also tell you, are we actively recruiting for a family physician in High Prairie now? And no, we're not.
I don't hear an answer, yes or no in that.
So I'm saying there's, the workforce plans are being developed.
No, I want the old one.
Right, and again, what I'm trying to say is, we've gone with the information we have to date, so we can share the information we have to date that we've used in determining what do we think we need. We can share that.
Is that a workforce plan?
Well, it's the closest thing that we have at this point, right?
So it
'Cause
will
that's,
be a report.
so it would lay out, for example, for High Prairie, it would lay out what are we looking at for, the number of family docs, what we would have for anesthesia, surgery.
Okay, and it's
Right.
out of date, we understand it's out
Right.
of date. You're moving forward for another one, and you will be meeting with the High Prairie Medical Clinic to get their input in the new one. The one you're going to give us is out of date.
Right.
Totally understand that.
But but she just said that they have a doctor that could come.
Right.
And they can't get it. Why?
So again, that's part of what we actually have to talk to the High
Are
Prairie
you going to
Medical
meet with
Clinic
them
about.
at a different time, not 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, so again, I'm not involved in the scheduling piece. The idea is we want to meet with Dr. Lachlan, Dr. Edwards, and actually go through, so why do you believe that we actually need another physician specifically in the High Prairie Medical Clinic? Not in High Prairie, not in the community overall, but specifically in your clinic. And I think there's value in us better understanding that, and that's the reason why we want to meet and go over it. And I think that that's an important dialogue for us to have. The reason, sorry, Mayor Cox, on the other piece, again, I'm not trying to be difficult. The workforce plans are being developed provincially. In other words, there has never been these definitive workforce plans. This is what we've been moving towards. I'm happy to share what we've taken to our ZMAC. Happy to go ahead and share that, right? Because that has been the construct of what we've used. I just want to be candid that I don't want to be claiming that there is something that is there that isn't.
Okay, why was this physician refused? There must be a reason. Can you tell us why that was? Okay,
again,
there must be a reason why the physician who wants to come here cannot get a practice readiness assessment. You have denied that. There must be a reason. Can you tell us what that reason is? Is it because the workforce plan says we need 8 physicians? We have 7 now, you have 1 coming, so now we don't need any more physicians? Is that true?
So,
Is that the reason?
so there's multiple reasons.
Well, no, is that,
I'm trying to answer your question.
Okay.
Right, which is, there's multiple reasons. So partly, again, what we would want to better understand is, and that's why it's a two-way conversation, why do you feel you actually need a physician in the High Prairie Medical Clinic? Not in
because
High
I'm
Prairie.
planning on retiring soon. That's why, so I would like that. But you have not asked me that. You have not until last week asked me for my input to this plan,
So,
okay? But you have a plan. You said we're not recruiting for any more, so obviously there's a plan.
so previously, we had actually gathered input from again, our physician leaders in High Prairie and physicians in High Prairie. That formed some of the initial base.
Did you get that from Dr. Laughlin and Dr. and me? No, you did not.
So there was.
So which physicians were contributing to this?
Yeah, so there was input that came previously. I can't identify exactly who the physicians were, but I know this is the information that came up to our ZMAC previously of here's some of the feedback from High Prairie, right? And it was from that it moved forward.
Well, I'm
But
going
again,
to tell you that it wasn't from us,
Okay?
okay?
We know
So,
now that the workforce plan did not include information from High Prairie Medical Clinic,
Well-
but that you are moving forward with a meeting to discuss with them their needs
Yeah, so it's
in
my
the future.
So it's my understanding that information did come from our physicians in High Prairie when this was being developed before. So I would want to be clear that that absolutely is my understanding.
That's your understanding,
Right.
but it is not the medical clinic's understanding.
Right.
And neither one of us are here to debate which one is right and which is wrong. We're here to make sure that going forward, you understand what the needs of the High Prairie Medical Clinic are. And
Right.
you have said you would meet with them at a reasonable time, hopefully. But you haven't said that, but I'm hoping that you
Yes.
will meet at a reasonable time
Yes.
and discuss what are their needs.
Right.
And I think that moving forward, they should be able to lay out what they feel their needs are with substantiation.
however, I would like to have what the plan is as of today.
Yes.
Yes.
That was what Dr. Worry has said, that he
Yes.
would supply as much as he could. It appears.
Can we
he
have
did
a
not.
time limit on when that's going to happen?
Could we have a time limit, Dr.
So
Worry?
we would have that for when we actually meet with Dr. Edwards and
Which
Dr.
is,
Laughlin.
which is next week, okay? So,
So
okay.
it would be next week.
So,
I'm
can
not
we
sure.
have a written copy of it so we can give it to the town and surrounding area?
Right, so again, I'm saying it would be something we would want to make sure that we have ready for our meeting next week,
Okay.
right? And then again, should you wish to go ahead and share it, sure, and the request has been here, happy. I mean, the numbers are exactly the numbers that I've laid out tonight. So again, happy to go ahead and write those numbers down and happy to go ahead and share that piece. Again, I would simply want to emphasize to what Dr. Edwards has mentioned tonight, she's brought forward a critical piece of information, which is the reason why we need to meet with our private clinic owners. So for example, usually this information comes up in medical staff meetings. What I've heard is, you know, these topics have never been raised let me rephrase that, in the recent past, so in the last 9 months, these topics have never come up in medical staff meetings to say, hey, there's particular things that we would want to be able to flag or have the conversation. That's the normal environment for at least initiating those conversations, and that hasn't taken place. It's not normal for the topics in most communities to typically be brought up through the media. Nonetheless, to the point that's been brought up by Councillor Gilroy, we want to move past differences and move towards how do we function as a team. We want to better understand where is Dr. Edwards, where is Dr. Laughlin coming from, because we think that's important.
And moving forward, I believe everyone in these two councils are in agreement, as well as the gallery. We want to move forward for the betterment of the community. Do you have another?
I do have another. Dr. Worry stated that whenever a foreign medical graduate was interested in this community, that both clinics were offered opportunity to interview. We have not. They have been toured through our clinic, but that's not an opportunity to interview them. In fact, I believe Dr. Magna Dutoy never came to our clinic. She was hired for the other clinic. And we've also been told that we are not allowed to interview these people unless Alberta Health Services is present.
That actually is a comment that I have heard, and I have brought it up with Dr. Worry repeatedly. So again, the process was supposed to be, from what I understand, that the recruiter with Ken Matthews, Reed Matthews, and George Key works with the doctor, touring the community, and then that doctor should have access to to both clinics, knowing both clinics are there, and this is where I have a problem. Do they make their own arrangements? How do they know who to contact in that clinic? Where is this falling to pieces that this clinic feels that they're not
Gotcha.
getting access?
So maybe I can comment, because I've been involved in a couple of the tours here, candidates that have come through. So candidates that come through, actually see both clinics, should they then choose. So for example, on the tours that I've been involved in, again, if a physician is indicating, I'd like an opportunity to actually go ahead and meet with the High Prairie Medical Clinic, again, then they would like to meet with the High Prairie Medical Clinic, and then they go and do so. So on several of the tours I've been on, they've taken a business card from their business manager as they've toured, and again, if that individual physician wants to follow up with the High Prairie Medical Clinic, they have that option for doing so. They also have the option for saying, I don't want to work in the High Prairie Medical Clinic, or I don't want to be interviewed by the High Prairie Medical Clinic. That's also their choice. But we feel it's important that they at least see the High Prairie Medical Clinic. We think that's important for them to actually see, well, do you know what it's looking at? Do you see some of the key people that are there? And then again, if you would like to go ahead and meet with them and discuss that, that's absolutely between the High Prairie Medical Clinic and the physician that's involved. But we also respect the fact that if they don't want to do that, then they have that choice.
So there wasn't a single physician who wanted to be interviewed? Is that true? Because we haven't had anyone who's come and said, want to sit down and talk to us alone. Not a single one.
Right, and again, I can only comment on the ones I've been involved with. The ones I've been involved with, what I've seen is the physicians, when they look at the two different models of where they'd like to work, have chosen one model over another model. Now, I can appreciate how that would be frustrating for the High Prairie Medical Clinic. At the same time, part of what we're trying to do is offer a different model of care, right? We are trying to do something that is going to go ahead and recruit physicians to High Prairie. Dr. Edwards is talking about how challenging that can be. We want something that's going to draw physicians here, and then ultimately they do have a choice as to where they want to work. And if they choose, because the last several people that have been recruited to High Prairie have chosen to work in the High Prairie in the Community Health and Wellness Clinic, and we respect the fact that the physicians have that choice.
And I have attended the meet and greet with with 3 physicians in the past 6 months, a year, 8 months, and I have asked each one of them, did you have an opportunity to see the High Prairie Medical Clinic? You are aware there are 2 clinics here, and I've been very blunt. Did you get an opportunity to see it? And all 3 of those doctors said, yes, we saw that.
Yes, they do see it as they walk through it with the team from Alberta Health Services. Okay? That's their opportunity to see the clinic. They're not there to talk with us, to give us an opportunity to talk with them.
So I would ask, what would you like the recruiter, because the recruiter works for the community, what would you ask the recruiter to be doing? They're picking up the business card, they're telling the doctor, here's the card, the information, the contact information. Contact them if you're interested in working in that committee.
What we would like is when they come to know that they're coming so that we can get their CV, and for them to have an opportunity, not their choice, just to come and talk with us. That they set aside a time when they are just talking to us, not with any else about. I have to say, I was wrong. Dr. Chuang, when he first came, we did get a chance to interview him. When we talked with him, he said, we were giving him information about our clinic, and he says, oh, but I've been recruited to go to the other clinic. Okay. It was already decided before he came to our clinic.
So I think terminology is a problem with the recruiter.
Well, firstly, let's also be clear, that was between the 2 previous private clinics. Okay, so that was the Associate Clinic and High Prairie Medical Clinic. That was not.
Yes,
something
but
that
it was
being
already
discussed
in the plan
between
to have a
Community
health and wellness clinic there. It was already planned. Okay, it was already planned.
All right, so let's, all right.
Why do they have to justify to you why they want a doctor? I don't quite understand that. Why can't they just get a doctor, why do they have to have it justified? I thought we were a free country with free enterprise.
So again, what I would say is if they want to recruit, again, a fully licensed physician, they absolutely can do so.
Any doctor.
Right, but that's not the guidelines that come from the College of Physicians of Surgeons of
But
Alberta.
they say that the College of Physicians have said that it was okay, but AHS has.
No, what the college says is you may qualify for a license, but again, you would still actually go ahead and have to require some degree of an assessment. For us to sponsor, which would be the key part for the assessment, again, we have to make sure that we feel it would fit into, the overall healthcare planning that's there for the area.
So
Right.
again, to me,
And
that seems,
those are the regulations that are there
seems
that
kind
we
of
have to follow.
communistic to me.
Well, I can appreciate, now in all fairness, as I've tried to say, I believe that some of the reasons why this has come is people looking at, they want to make sure that we're in a position that we're making, the best use of physician resources that we have. Physicians tend to be a very expensive resource, and they want to make sure that we've got the best use of that resource, that's really important.
I don't think you guys have.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. Let's go back. The recruitment process, more communication needs to happen, I believe, between the High Prairie Medical Clinic and the recruiter. So,
So I would have no concerns and think it's very reasonable to say, when is a candidate coming? Can we have a copy of the CV? Sure, don't think that's unreasonable at all. I would share with council that one of the reasons why, again, it has at times been more tenuous in some of the recruitments is some of the feedback we've had from the two previous private clinics was different applicants feeling that, hey, I got bullied, I got pushed into one thing or another. Different feedback, again, disagreements between the two private clinics. I didn't get treated fairly, they didn't get treated fairly. So again, that's the reason why anybody coming in, it is, and we've even had that since the creation of the Community Health and Wellness Clinic. We had a candidate that came to High Prairie and felt that, again, he got forced into an interview with the High Prairie Medical Clinic and felt very uncomfortable and refused to come to High Prairie. It was very clear that he felt as though it was an awkward situation. He didn't want to be in that scenario, and he blamed Alberta Health Services for it as we were in the position to sponsor, to say, why would you allow it? Why would you not just go ahead and say, would I like an interview? Would I like to talk to him? And if I would like to, I'm happy to do so. But why would you allow this to take place?
I'm disappointed that your doctors who are adults can't say.
I think at times people that come in feel that, okay, I kind of have to do this. And again, I think it can be a challenging environment to walk into. I think it's very fair for people to be given the opportunity that, hey, if you'd like to look at it, again, physicians coming in as business people, right, have an opportunity to go, where would you potentially like to work? If you want to look at 4 different clinics, then go ahead and reach out to the 4 different clinics. We're very candid with anyone that comes in, and we have Dr. Dutoit and Dr. Nancy here. They can feel free to speak to it, that they have the option, and they both had the option as to where they wanted to work when they came in. They can speak to it from their own personal experience, because we fundamentally believe that, we need to make sure that fairness is in place.
Well, and that fairness is in place too, because some of the doctors that you've toured through High Prairie have gone to Peace River. So, they are weighing options.
Yes, absolutely.
constantly.
Yes,
So,
that's true.
do you have another question? We've dealt with the workforce planning, we've dealt with more open communication with the recruiters.
I have lots to say, but I'm not going to say it right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please keep in touch with us as to how the meetings are progressing. Community Partnership Team is available to both clinics at all times. Councillor Gilroy.
I just had a quick question actually for both. You're talking about if you had noticed you could get a CV, their bio type thing. When the recruiter comes through, is there some sort of portfolio that they can see from both clinics? Like if you're going to buy a car, for example, you have all the stats on the car and what it's, all the ins and outs and stuff like that. Is there anything that both AHS and the private clinic have that they can just give the guy or give the girl, whoever, and say, here's the basic knowledge, so you can be prepared if you want to ask questions? And it's just, fair playing field that way, as opposed to, here's a card, or if you want to talk to them, yes. I'm just wondering, because it's a culture shock to us first just to come up here, and then you come up here and saying moose and deer and all the rest. I mean, is there a way of just getting a portfolio for them to see so they can come prepared? I mean,
Yeah, so it's a fair question. In general, what we've tried to do, and again, because in a number of our communities, we have 4 clinics, we've tried to make an introduction, and then if people want to then sit back and they want to meet, or they want to have conversations, these are all bright people that are business people. They can absolutely sit down and choose to sit down and talk to the different business owners. And I imagine they'd ask several similar questions. How does it work? What is your business model? What sort of patient volume do you see? What sort of agreement would I have to sign? What sort of overhead would I pay? How many people have left this clinic in what period of time? Again, how do you manage your clinic? These would all be normal questions that would typically be asked. We specifically try to make an introduction and then allow people that are coming to town, so it doesn't come across as a bias. We allow people coming to town to choose who do you want to, again, have further conversations with.
once again, is it possible to have a portfolio for each and say, here, you've already gone through the clinics, here's follow-up, and if you want to go beyond that, feel free, but here are the basics of each clinic.
So maybe what I could throw out is certainly if private clinics wanted to say, hey, by the way, here's a brochure I'd like to give you, or here's something I'd like to give you about our clinic, no concerns with that, right? So if different clinics in different towns wanted to be able to say, like as Mayor Cox is talking about when they're touring Peace River, High Prairie, multiple different places, here's information, because it's very common that again, the town of Peace River will say, here's a brochure about our community, here's all, as Dr. Edwards is talking about, here's all the amenities that we offer and why we'd want to have you here. I don't think that's unreasonable at all, Councillor.
Okay, just quickly, because I want to move this along. I have still Councillor Danaka's question on dialysis. I want the gallery to get a chance, and we're moving. So, what is your quick question, please?
I have a concern about how the clinic can survive. It's a fact, whether that we're not getting the homegrown people in High Prairie, regardless of which clinic, and that's been shown over the years. So if the clinic is going to rely on foreign people coming in, AHS is preventing foreign people from coming into the clinic, it's shutting them down. They cannot survive, and that just does not seem right to me. So how can they survive, and why would AHS have that kind of power to close them down?
I gotcha. So, and would want to be very clear on this, we have no interest in Dr. Laughlin or Dr. Edwards going anywhere. Also in multiple different other communities, we have 2 physicians that successfully run profitable and enjoyable practices. So can you run a successful and profitable, community practice with 2 docs? You absolutely can. And we see it in multiple different places in the north, right? So
That's possible for that to happen. We do not typically pry into how individual practices run. So we don't get into how are you managing your overhead, how many staff you have. That's none of our business. We're the regional health authority, and so we leave that. What I can say though is we got multiple different places where people are able to actually make that model work. Second point, I would also want to be clear, when we look at recruiting, if we look in and say, okay, we need another physician for High Prairie, right? It's a question of, it's a physician for High Prairie. That physician, right, so that physician that applies through drjobsalberta.com, they can go to either clinic. They do not get, they don't get, the High Prairie Medical Clinic is not disadvantaged for a foreign trained physician coming in as to where they want to be able to go. Because the physician coming in can choose, and feel free to talk to Dr. Nazi and Dr. Dutois, because they're here tonight. And they can talk for their own personal experience rather than what I'm hearing is a number of accusations as to how did it actually play out.
Well, there was also an accusation that we bullied a physician. I would like to know who that was and who was doing the bullying.
Sure. So this was a physician that, again...
Yeah, which physician bullied?
Yeah, so this was a physician that came to High Prairie, came for a tour, and in the end actually ended up going to Barhead. And before I mention this in council, I'd actually want to get his permission to go ahead and share it, and then happy when we have our meeting, Dr. Edwards, to share that information with you and Dr. Laughlin.
Yes.
I would like his permission before sharing it.
Please. All right. The next one, do you have something
I
else?
was going to make some other comment, and I can't remember what it was.
Well, as we open it
Huh.
up for public questions,
Yeah.
if you have one, please stay there at the microphone.
I just have a quick question. I know,
Okay.
just so I can understand the payment, your recruiter is paid by Alberta Health Services?
Yes.
So, yeah, Alberta Health Services has staff, right? And so they're employees of Alberta
And the
Health
clinic's
Services.
owned by Alberta Health Services? Sorry, Kevin, I know that everybody's running out of time, so I just wanna understand it. So the clinic that there's two
Sure,
clinics
but-
here, one's owned by Alberta Health Services and one's privately owned? And then the
Right.
recruiter's paid by Alberta Health Services, is that correct?
Yeah, so the recruiter recruits to a community, not to a particular clinic, whether it's an HS clinic or a private clinic. They recruit to a community.
Do you think that there might be some assumption by the doctors that are being recruited, or even hesitation that they should probably only stick with Alberta Health Services? If the recruiter's Alberta Health Services and the clinic's Alberta Health Services, that they may not be chosen if they went somewhere else, or that there might be something that might hold them up, or...
Right.
Like if it's private clinic to private clinic, how it used to be, I can see where then it was just totally their choice, but there may be some extra pressures put on when the payment for the recruiter is...
Right, so firstly, again, it's one of the reasons why, and again, as physician applicants have come to High Prairie, we've insisted that they've actually visited both clinics. But let's also not forget the fact that can a private clinic hire their own recruiter? And do many private clinics do that? They absolutely do that. And can they? Sure they can. And can then a candidate that they find, can they apply for a job that's posted on Dr. Jobs Alberta? Yes, they can.
Okay, we're moving on now. Counselor Tanaka, we will entertain that question that you had on dialysis and chemotherapy. Turn your mic on. We're not getting the service.
Based on
That was a good cue. That was a good cue.
yeah, based on the population that you look at or the statistics that you look at for what's needed in the community, and since I've been on council, this is the third year. Since I've been on council, it's always been one of the issues or two of the issues with dialysis and chemo to be in that hospital. And I'm not exactly sure why or what the reasoning is that we aren't getting that when it is obviously been identified by community groups, citizens, that this is something that we need.
And so I guess the intro I would give you, because I think it's important, is that to fully answer each of those questions, we should make sure that one, we bring, and I would open it up to Mayor Cox and Reed Matthews, if we want to bring the Northern Alberta Renal Program, the representatives here, because they oversee specifically dialysis. They can literally talk without giving names, client A, client B, how does it work? How does the program function? Because they can give you the specifics. It's no different for cancer. That again, we've got a cancer care team because again, these are subspecialized services. And so we could ask if there was an interest in them actually coming to address the question, because I think there's nary a conversation I have with Reed Matthews that goes by that I don't hear about dialysis. So as an overview, however, in general, what I've heard when the NARP team has looked at High Prairie, or they look at any community, they're trying to identify how many people actually would require traditional dialysis when they're actually trying to figure out, where do they actually set up their traditional dialysis locations. They put heavy emphasis on how do we, because the average lifespan once you go on traditional dialysis is quite short. So they put heavy emphasis on how do we prevent people from getting into this stage of kidney failure in the first place. They have chronic renal failure clinics. They have an emphasis on having home hemodialysis. For people that I know that actually, have been through traditional dialysis, they'd be the first to tell you, and I'm sure it's the reason why council brings it up. It's extremely difficult. It's very emotionally tolling, and it's hard on their lives. And so, many people sit back and say they want the newer technology that's out there, which is home hemo. So you hook yourself up to a machine, and it cleans your blood every night, right? Rather than actually coming back and building up toxins and getting your blood cleaned every couple of days, right? And that's more of the traditional model. There's also the opportunity of something called peritoneal dialysis, where you use the membrane of your tummy to actually go ahead and filter out some of the toxins that are there as well. So there's a major push when you look at overall dialysis needs to one, prevent it in the first place, then to get into what could we use that would actually provide people with a better quality of life, and then if we absolutely have to, what would we need to provide for traditional dialysis. I've also shared when Reed Matthews and Councillor Rose and I have chatted at different occasions that, you know, it's my personal belief that as the community health and wellness team reaches out, and in particular as it builds and there's deeper connections in with our Indigenous populations, I think we're going to start to move from, I've heard of someone who has this problem and is not seeking treatment, into Mrs. Smith actually needs this help and she wants it. And we may find, and we've already, you know, we've had these conversations with NARP, that we may find the needs in the area evolve, and it's one of the reasons why, again, you know, at a minimum, we wanted to make sure that there was some space provided in the new health facility for it. Again, my suggestion would be NARP, who are the specialists in dialysis, are really the people that can best answer the question, but I would give that to you as kind of an overview. It can be challenging with low number of people to actually run something of high quality, and I know that's the other piece that the teams try to balance. Chemo, the basic challenge they run into, again, is it's significantly about numbers and about the fact that you can't afford to make any mistakes when you're giving chemotherapy. You have to make sure that it's done perfectly. And so again, based on the information they have from some of their other provincial modeling, they would need to have a certain degree of certain types of cancer that can be treated with chemo, so IV chemotherapy, in order for it to actually be provided here safely in High Prairie. And the key piece is the safety piece. So if it can't be done safely, the cancer care team is not prepared to support it. Now, when they look at their projections and they go further out, they do project that there's going to be a need for that here in High Prairie, but they don't see that in the immediate future. That would be the overview that I would give. I would suggest that, you know, as our North Zone team, similar to, you know, conversations with, you know, with cancer and with our dialysis team, is we are encouraging the subspecialty teams to look at, you know, what are other ways in which they can provide the service and decrease people traveling. You know, I think our interest and Alberta Health Services' interest overall is we really do want to make sure we can have as many people treated, you know, with quality and with safety as close to home as possible. So I'm sorry for the long drawn-out answer, and I know it's just an overview, but I felt I would give it a shot.
Thank you, and I think that Reed Matthews and I will follow up with our CAOs to schedule a meeting with Northern Alberta Renal.
Perfect.
He said that's a great idea.
See what happens when the councils get together? Perfect.
I read his lips.
You know that he agrees with you.
We'll entertain questions from the floor now. Mr. Berger, could you come to the microphone?
No, I can talk loud enough.
You can talk loud enough.
So you might be able to pick it up. I was really surprised, Ann Stewart there made the comment that everything that AHS seems to be doing kind of leads towards communism. I get the same impression. You know, it seems like no matter how much you say, everybody has free choice, and everybody is allowed to make their own decisions, and everybody can go where they want. In fact, you are trying to exercise command and control. It really seems that way. We have a number here of 1,500. We're only going to allow 8 here. These are the rules. It almost seems as the College of Physicians and Surgeons actually walked into something here that really made your job easier, because all of a sudden they took away a whole bunch of options that you don't have to politically worry about anymore. Because now you gotta be an accredited doctor in Alberta to even come to High Prairie. Otherwise, you know, it's out of your hands. I'm really wondering here, do you guys have your own business plan that I can see or that the public can see? Do you have that really lays out right across the province of Alberta exactly what your plans are? And not the very smooth discussion, you know, and I gotta admit that you're pretty smooth. But you haven't answered all the questions here that people have asked. But it was nice listening to you, and I learned an awful lot. But this plan, you know, it could be a really simple 5-page document that the politicians put out to make it look like they're doing something. But if you've been working on a plan probably for years is what it sounds like, and you still haven't produced anything, do you really have a plan in AHS about what you're doing? About how you're going to cut costs? About, is this the master plan? Is there's only going to be 8 doctors in that town and that's it? And we're going to push people over to the wellness clinics? I would like to see a business plan that really makes sense, that you guys work on, and that you measure yourself and your cohorts in AHS. What are the metrics that you use to say you're doing your job? Is that included in that? I'd like to see that. And there's also one thing, no matter how much you want to show that you're unbiased, when it comes to recruitment about a community, when it comes to buying a car, a lot of people will say, they'll look at the dealer and says, truck A, truck B, which one do you think I should buy? And, oh, I can't tell you that, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you know, maybe you should go over there. I don't know if that's just kind of a thing that goes on in recruitment of all kinds, whether, you know, it's for Northern Lakes College or whether it's AHS or a business where a person is supposed to be unbiased, but they just give off little clues, body language, it just radiates, you know, about, I like that one over there. So it's not enough to say you can make your own decision. You know, there's an awful lot of background stuff that goes into that pushes people in a certain direction. And AHS has to be extremely aware of that in their recruitment. But basically, I would just like to know, do you think you're doing your job? And I'd like to see the business plan that you measure that by. Okay?
Sure, so maybe, and Stacy will be able to correct me on the right titling here, but there is both a provincial plan, so there's a provincial AHS, it's typically a rolling 3-year plan, and again, it's on the external website, as well as there's a North Zone health and business plan that's also available on the health on the website. So the provincial plan lays out, to one of your latter questions, the performance metrics, you know, that AHS is bound to go ahead and report. So there's, you know, 17 performance metrics that we report publicly on a regular basis, and those are all listed out because it is important that we measure how we're doing, and it is important that we report that to the public. So yes, that's on our website. You know, and maybe because it's come up, you know, I would just ask if Dr. Dutoit or Dr. Niazi, if you guys want to talk about, you know, again, when you came to High Prairie and you had an opportunity, because again, the comments have come up multiple times, you know, and again, we fully recognize that physicians, you know, do have the choice as to where they want to go. Do you feel you were given the opportunity to really look at different models and choose? Sorry, Dr. Niazi.
I just want to talk about my experience when I was offered to come to the community of High Prairie.
Doctor, can you hear Councillor Tanaka? Can you hear him? Come sit here, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just would like to talk about the. Is it working?
Yeah, that's on.
Okay. When I was recruited to the community of High Prairie, I was told that there was 2 clinics, and when I came here, I went to both clinic, and I took the business card from Judy, and I went to both clinics, and to be honest, 5 times or even more, I was told, do you want to go to the medical clinic? You were offered to interview there, and it was totally my option to go with the other clinic. So to be honest, 5 times, maybe more, my recruiter told me, do you want to go there? It's totally your option, and it was totally my choice. And I get the business card, and they told me, Judy told me, if you want an interview anytime, you can call me.
All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you.
So, the question from Mr. Berger was on the business plan and,
So it's on the website,
Right.
right, which was that, as well as the performance metrics, right, sir? And again, that's part of what's there on the provincial business plans that's out there, but there's also a North Zone health and business plan that's also on the external website, sir.
okay. And the recruitment, of course,
Yes.
being a fair, even field.
Yep.
Okay, can we, Ms. Weeb?
I just moved back to High Prairie just within the past just over 2 months, and so I don't know a lot of the history of what's been going on over the last little while. But I do have a few questions. When I worked for a doctor in the Peace River area in the 90s for 3 years, they were told at that time that all South Africa and Scotland doctors were fully licensed, qualified, and they did not have to go through anything to come here. Other countries might have to go through this process, but not those 2 countries. I was just wondering when that had changed.
So, I don't know the exact date, but I would say that typically our college identifies, 5 different countries that so there's the College of Physicians and Surgeons that having reviewed the medical curriculum and having watched physicians that have come out of that country for years, they're comfortable saying that when you come, you don't actually require an assessment. So typically that's people out of the US, that's out of the UK, that's out of Ireland, that's out of Australia, and that's out of New Zealand.
So there are still 5 countries compared to the 2 that there was in the 90s, okay? My next question, you answered partially for Councillor Rose in regards to the fee schedule for the one clinic versus the other. One of the issues that we came across in the 90s, and sounds like it might be an issue still, is the fact that the hospitals were subsidizing the rent for the doctors that were working in the hospital. So it wasn't necessarily whether it was a fee for service or a wage, it was the rent itself that was subsidized. Is that the case going to be now or not?
Sure. So under the current setup, and again, I'm not in a position, your question would have to go to Dr. Laughlin, Dr. Edwards, as to what the overhead compensation or overhead paid would be in the High Prairie Medical Clinic. In working the Community Health and Wellness Clinic, the docs do pay overhead and have to pay overhead, and there's a range of overhead that they pay depending on exactly what their billings are. But they do have to go ahead and contribute, and they have to pay overhead. That being said, what we also try to do, and it is building off Councillor Rose's question, is we try to make sure that our physicians are in a position, like the reason why there's a range is that as you bill above a particular point, then you end up paying more, is we're trying to make sure that there's an incentive for people to spend more time with patients and families, right? Again, because what we've seen is otherwise in some models and under the fee-for-service system, again, you bill for seeing a particular patient, regardless of the quality of the care that you're providing during that time. And I don't mean that as a shot, I mean that actually is the system. So it's a system right now under fee-for-service, it's heavily volume-based. If you see more people, you make more money.
Okay. And then I have 2 quick questions, one that you may want to use. Being objective type of person, I was wondering if it would be possible that the private clinic and the community health clinic would go pro rata, a ratio of them being allowed 2 and you being allowed 6, or vice versa, of the new doctors in town, so that there was an edgewise. And the other comment is, there's a business adage, which doesn't seem to be happening here, and that's usually the number of doctors. In this case, let the market decide whether we need 8, 3, or 20.
Gotcha. So maybe to the first point, we actually believe it's really important for practitioners themselves to actually choose, where they want to work. So don't think it's appropriate that we would actually go ahead and mandate physicians to work in one clinic or in another. And again, what we wouldn't want to do is actually be in a position that we drive physicians from coming to High Prairie because they actually lose that choice. On the second piece,
There are some things, as we discussed here, that when it comes to fully licensed physicians, right, they absolutely, a community practice can bring on as many physicians as they would like. When it does come to though people that are not fully licensed, again, the College of Physicians and Surgeons has regulations that we have to follow, and that's what we're doing.
I would like to comment on the fees, fee for service, what our clinic pays and what the other clinic does. Yes, they do pay what they call an overhead. If they see X number of physicians, they are charged 10% on that amount. If they see X plus, they're charged a slightly higher fee, and etc. They do not pay any overhead on what is made in the hospital. In fact, all of the fees from emergency and in-hospital care, there's no overhead charged on that. And I'm wondering, maybe you can tell us, do you have a billing service that bills for that, for your billings through the hospital, or does Alberta Health Services do that for you for free?
So the Alberta Health Services does it as part of the overall.
Okay, so in essence, if you see X number of patients in the hospital, you pay 10% on that money, and then everything else is pocketed.
So
okay?
No, that's not what it is.
Okay,
So,
tell me, enlighten me, because...
No problem, happy
okay.
to. So it's basically the overhead ranges between 10 and 30%.
Right.
Not unusual in many clinics.
Mm-hmm.
The overhead is 20, 30%. It's rare to get down to 10. Many are at 12. So again, when we look at the range of what private clinics actually charge for overhead, we're within that range.
That's right, and those are strictly for the patients that are seen in the clinic, correct?
Right, and
okay,
it's also not unusual, if I can just finish, it's also not unusual in many practices that the practice owners don't actually go ahead and charge overhead on patients seen in the hospital or in the emergency department. That's quite common in many other practices. Other private clinics, and that's what I'm saying, I'm not sure how the High Prairie Medical Clinic works, other clinics charge overhead on everything. And again, that can be some of the reasons why physicians feel, okay, I don't know if I'm getting as good of a deal here as I should, or I'm not sure if I'm actually being treated fairly. But again, that's what I'm trying to say, that private clinics get to decide and they get to run their overhead as they see fit. That's their call. I'm not aware of the exact High Prairie Medical Clinic overhead structure, and quite frankly, it's not something I need to know as the Regional Health Authority.
Do the physicians from the Health and Wellness Clinic hire a billing department to bill for their billings through the hospital?
And so the billing for any of the services they're providing is done through the Community Health and Wellness.
So that's absolutely free, right?
It's not free. It's not free at all. It's part of the overall package of services. So for example, there are services, so for example, in the Community Health and Wellness Clinic, and one of the counselors asked this earlier, you're going to be part of it. You have to commit to actually providing ongoing emergency coverage. To my knowledge, that doesn't actually take place in the High Prairie Medical Clinic now. There's no
because we have already contributed our 20 years of call in this community.
So if I can just finish, right?
Yep.
It's part of a mandated piece, and there's certain principles that the Community Health and Wellness Clinic commits to. Certain, whether it's again reporting quality metrics, whether it's a number of different things that again, a private clinic in the community doesn't have to do any of those things. So there's a number of services that will be provided, right, and are committed to through the Community Health and Wellness Clinic, and no different than the overall schedule of benefits for fee-for-service. When you look at the schedule of benefits, you provide different services, you get different compensation. And that's long-standing. So that's one of the reasons why when we ran into a position that we almost couldn't keep our emergency department open in 2014, it was like, hey, well, we better step in with something where we get that commitment. Does that influence the overall compensation that physicians receive? Yes. Should it? Yes, it's a different service.
I would say it would have been a much cheaper fix to just hire physicians to work in the emergency department. However, you didn't answer the question. You pay for their billing. You do their billings from the hospital for free. You don't take a percentage of that, correct?
So again,
because other communities that collect, do their billings have to pay a billing service. So that's a great advantage,
so not
right, for your
necessarily.
physician.
I I don't grant what you're saying. It's not for free. It's part of overall compensation. It's also not unusual that in many clinics, the clinic actually collects overhead based on the services provided in that clinic. So for example, the emergency department is not part of a private community clinic.
Correct.
So in many places, in many other communities, physicians actually, while they actually pay overhead in the community clinic, they have their own billing agent.
That's right.
For a hospital service or for emergency department, so they don't pay overhead into that private community clinic. They go ahead and they do their own
Correct.
billings.
They have
that
to
way.
pay a billing service to do their billings,
That's right.
but the physicians in the health and wellness clinic do not, because Alberta Health Services does that for them and does not take a percentage.
So we do.
Yes.
It's part of the overall compensation package.
You take a percentage from their hospital billings?
No, we don't. Again, what I'm
No,
saying is,
okay,
it's
so
not-
you're
it's
saying
not
really
for
you're
free,
doing
Dr.
their
Edwards.
billings for free
No,
from
they're
the
not,
hospital?
Dr. Edwards, I don't grant that. What I'm saying is it's overall packages. It's what you're looking at. The services provided in the community health and wellness clinic with the commitment to the ED and multiple other things are not committed to and are not provided from other community clinics necessarily. That's different. You provide a different service. It's a different compensation.
Do you understand what he's saying?
Yes,
Yes.
he is providing,
It's included in the percentage taken off the doctors.
Right.
we are looking at two different clinic models. There is
Yes,
the
I
private
understand
clinic
that, but I
model.
mean, if in essence the physicians in the other clinic are probably pocketing 99% of their billings, and you know, I pay 40% in my clinic,
Exactly.
right?
And
Yeah.
Alberta Health Services has chosen that will be the compensation model for
Okay,
that.
so I mean, obviously, if a physician's going to come to this community and know I'm going to pay I'm going to pocket 99% of my billings, they're going to go to the other clinic.
Not necessarily, because if I go to the community health and wellness clinic, I'm going to have to work weekends. I'm going to
Yes,
have to
but
work
as all new
overnight.
physicians who come here do, as I did, as Dr. Laughlin did, we're old now, we've provided 20, 30 years of call, we're tired of it. We understand that. And we actually provided that call at a far, far lower fee. In fact, during one point, what we got paid to see a patient in outpatients was less than what we saw in the clinic for a clinic visit. So, and they're compensated quite well in outpatients. However, I believe you were told that these people were going to be put on a salary. Did you not gather that before?
At the beginning of
Yes.
community health and
But all of a sudden it changed.
I believe he said it would be an evolution to that.
It's moving towards an ARP, right? So an alternative remuneration model. Now, in alternative remuneration models, could they look at it exactly? Because again, alternative remuneration models can have pieces where again they take overhead out of them. Sure. Again, that depends what that looks like. But just want to be clear, this is not physicians pocketing 99% as has been suggested. Your overhead is between 10 and 30%.
Of what you see
competitive-
in the
That's
clinic.
competitive with the market that's out there for community-based practices. Now again, if some private clinics want to charge overhead on hospital billings and ED as well, that's their choice, right? And again, that's the reason why some physicians join those groups and why some physicians leave. Others don't. They only charge money, they only charge overhead if you actually, for the services you provide in their clinic.
Which goes back to the fact that we have
Two different models.
Okay, because you limit the number of patients you see in the clinic, where else do they go? They go to emergency,
Exactly.
right?
And I think they're working on, through the community partnership team, they're working on providing.
And why would you want to change that billing system? You wouldn't want to go onto an alternate billing or fee system,
So
right?
again,
It's to their advantage to pay only 10% on seeing 25 patients, and then everything else is going to be seen in emergency at a far inflated fee. Why would you want to change that?
So again, I don't grant the premise that it's a limited number of patients that would be seen and that it
Well, there
inherently
is. You
cost-
pay
and that it
10% on
inherently costs
X
the
number of
system more.
patients, and then if you see more, you pay 15%, and if you see more, you pay 30%.
So it's not, again, as I've already explained, Dr. Edwards, it's not based on the number of patients. And again, part of what we do want to be able to do is we want to make sure, and again, as they move towards an ARP, the ARP is really between the physicians and Alberta Health. so government, and that's often where the conversations take place, and it's an exchange of services, no different than what we're talking about here. Where here, the services are different, and the commitment of services between the Community Health and Wellness Clinic and the High Prairie Medical Clinic.
So we're not gonna solve the difference
No, we're
in the
talking in
payment.
circles here, but
And
you
I
can see
understand what
what's
you're
going
saying.
on here. Yes.
But we're not gonna make a difference here
I know. I
in
just
that
wanted to
area.
make it clear to everyone here what
That
was really going
yes,
on.
you are working
Okay.
on a different payment model
Okay.
completely. I go back and I reiterate between Mr. Key, the Reeve Matthews and myself, that we are very concerned that the recruitment the communication has not followed through to the extent that I thought it would, although I am happy to hear that one of the doctors did move forward and had the choice. So that's a positive.
Yeah, again,
We are.
if we need to bring the other physicians forward, okay, fine. Again, I don't want frontline physicians to feel that they have to explain some of their business decisions either, simply because, again, a clinic says, well, geez, why am I not being chosen? And I'm not trying to be
Nope.
mean. I'm saying I want to be able to respect the professional privacy of some of the frontline physicians as well. So, you know, again, I can tell you that those choices are there. We think it's important that the choices are there.
Okay. Dr. DeToit? Dr. DeToit is the new medical director of the High Prairie Hospital.
Thank you, Mayor Cox. I would just like to say, first off, that I have a lot of respect for Dr. Lachlan and Dr. Edwards for the service they provide to the community. I would like the physicians, like you have mentioned, to move forward and work in a team in the new hospital to service the patients. When I was recruited for the community, I actually didn't apply to come to High Prairie. My application to Alberta Health Services said that I want to work in a professional setting with multidisciplinary team members. So I reiterated that in South Africa, I was part of a plan where we had physicians and dietitians and physios all working together for the benefit of the community. And that is where Dr. Wari actually ended up with my CV, not because I was interested in the community of High Prairie, but as the business model that they set up for our new clinic in High Prairie. And that is actually, I never heard of High Prairie before they actually told me about it. So, and that is the reason why I didn't go to the other clinic for an interview, because this model is the model of care that I chose to do my practice in. So I don't think that they were biased in the two different clinics. It was more that I had a bias to what my plan was in the future in working together to give a holistic approach to patient care. I've also sat in on some of the community partnership meetings, and there is a very big need in this community to have services available other than physicians. And I think I would just like to stress the fact that that 40 complement that you guys are talking of, it's not specialist physicians. It is people that is going to serve the whole community in terms of preventing people going into dialysis, going for chemotherapy. It will be an umbrella service for everyone. Would I like to have the other doctors from the clinic join in and be part of this commitment and team? Of course, we know that Dr. Edwards can do cesarean sections, and she has a vast knowledge of obstetrics, and that's why lots of our physicians have phoned her in the middle of the night, and she graciously came out to help them, even though she's not on call. So yes, we would like to have this collaborative thing. I do not think that Alberta Health Services has biased me in picking the one clinic above the other one. I think that we might feel biased towards the other clinic because it is a holistic approach, and the type of people that we want to recruit into our community are people that would like to give that part of a service. Would we prevent people from the other clinic to join in that service? No. We want a partnership. It is nice to be able to greet all of our colleagues not in the clinic. We do not want to fight in between. And I can say from our clinic's point of view, as well as the CMD, that all our clinic doctors has a very big respect for those doctors as well. So I do not think that this should be about what we pay and what we don't pay. I think it should be about what type of doctors we recruit for this community to serve the community in a complement that we need. And that is what I would like to say.
I don't think there is any animosity between the doctors in this community at all. All right? There isn't any. And you're right, I mean, it shouldn't be about money, etc. But I resent having to pay 40%. I really do. And I resent being blocked in hiring a physician that can lower that in my clinic. And that's what it seems like. We're going to make it as hard as possible for the High Prairie Clinic to survive. That's what it sounds like.
Can I ask you from a different perspective?
Sure.
So if there is only X amount of dollars to hire foreign doctors, and we have 2 towns, and our town needs a greater need than, say, Peace River, but Peace River wants to hire that thing, is it justified that Alberta Health Services has to spend thousands of dollars to recruit someone to a space that there is not a physician needed if we direly need one? And I think that is the point that they were trying to make through Alberta Health Services. They have X amount of money to recruit foreign workers with their work plan. If a community has a position for someone that is in dire need, they would apply that money for that physician to go there rather than to a community that really needs it, that doesn't need it at the time. And I think that is the point that Dr. Wari and them were trying to make. They have to decide in the North Zone where is the need. If there is a need for a physician to come in and the money is available to sponsor, they will sponsor it. And I think that is where the plan comes in, that they have to
Can I ask Dr. Wari how much it costs for an assessment?
So,
Thank you, Dr. Tutor.
so again, there's costs. I'm pausing, Dr. Edwards, because I just want to make sure that I collect my information on this. So I know that overall, in bringing a physician typically to a North Zone community, it usually costs between about $100,000 to about $150,000.
How much does the actual assessment cost?
Yeah, I don't have that piece in
Could we
front of
have
me,
that
right?
information?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah?
have that in front of me.
Yeah, I know. Could we have that information?
Happy to share it with you.
Okay,
when we
that
meet.
would be nice.
So I
Because
think the other-
maybe someone in the community would like to step up.
So I think
Or maybe we could have a fundraiser.
Yeah. So I
Yep.
think the other.
So it would be nice to know what that costs so that maybe we could bring in our physician and get him assessed.
So I think that's one of the factors, again, as we talked about, it links to overall, where are we identifying that we actually have these needs? Because it's not just the direct cost to Alberta Health Services, it's also what are we looking at as the overall cost to Alberta Health? So in other words, if a typical rural physician
So
is
that
gonna
you don't
be-
want to pay what that physician is going to charge? Is that what you're saying, once they get here?
No, what I'm saying is typically we want to make sure that we are employing, whether it's staff or whether it's physicians, in the places we need them in a responsible manner, so that with the limited tax dollars we have, that
Yes,
we can
that's what
actually
you're
get
saying.
good outcomes in care.
Yeah.
Do we have another question from the gallery?
So how's that working out in Canmore?
Do we have?
I don't know Cameron, sorry.
37, is that what you said, Cam? 37 doctors?
37 professionals, 17 I think practice, or general practice.
We need some
Again,
mountains.
I don't know the community, sorry.
Mr. Smith, did you have a question? Strepchuk. Jeez.
Yeah, actually, I have a point to make. You're talking about numbers and how you do your recruitment. You're basing it off of where we go to get our service. I'm going to give you an example. My son was born 12 years ago. I could not do it in High Prairie. I went to McLennan. I started seeing Dr. DeVette to have that delivery. All 5 of us are now seeing Dr. DeVette because he delivered my son. He delivered my next 2 children. It just made sense for us to continue going to see him as a family. We're not in High Prairie because there wasn't a service available at the time. So your numbers are skewed because there's a lot of people, I can tell you, that are going to McLennan because that's exactly what happened. Their doctor was the doctor who delivered their children, and now they're going to see him. That bleed out of this community needs to be addressed, and your numbers of 12,000 are skewed because of those people that are going to Slave Lake, going to Peace River, going to McLennan for doctors because of reasons like this. Because there were 2 doctors, 4 doctors. We had nobody to see. If I gotta wait a month to see a doctor, I'm going somewhere else. And I'm gonna continue to go where that care is better. Because I can see that doctor in a prompt manner. And that's not an offense against the doctors we have here. They're overworked. And your numbers are wrong. We need way more than 8 doctors. We need way more than, we need better quality nurses, we need better quality care in general.
Yes, so maybe what I'd say is overall is certainly in the example you brought up, it's one of the reasons why we're particularly looking at obstetrics. The entire reason why we recruited a family med anesthesia physician and why we've got a physician that can actually do C-sections is because we do particularly want to look at that piece for High Prairie, and we agree with you, we think it's important. When it comes to numbers, I wouldn't want to suggest that it's also just one source, because I think as Reed Matthews would attest to, George would attest to, when it comes to building any facility, there's usually argument with government over how many years, over exactly what numbers are. But what I can say is whether you're looking at catchment, population, whether again you may draw and try to draw on something from postal code, whether you look at location allocation information, you're trying to draw from multiple sources to look at what do we think the community needs so that people don't have to leave the community for care just as you described. So what you're describing is what we're looking to actually go ahead and stop, right? Because we want, you live in High Prairie. We want you, we want your family to be able to get that care here in High Prairie.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm going to ask for Reeve Matthews to say a few words in wrap up. And I appreciate the fact that all of you have come out and that Alberta Health Services has withstood our grilling pretty well. I see that Dr. Ibeck is making a dash for the door, but
stop everyone from leaving is what it is.
Reeve Matthews.
Just a couple things in wrapping up, I guess. Does Alberta Health Services have plans, Jeff? They've likely got one tower in Edmonton, 20 stories high, full of offices. That's all they do is develop plans of one form or another. I'd like to really see those people out in the front lines delivering services to the people instead of in those offices developing plans, but that's where they are. When it comes to the chemo and dialysis, if these were some sort of special services that, and I guess in a sense they are special services that people require, but to me they're not just special services anymore, they're essential services. And those essential services should be available in this hospital. Kevin, you and I have discussed a number of times the dialysis and the future of dialysis. The problem is I don't have time for the future of dialysis. We've got a epidemic here now. We know the people are here. And to even have to go and prove it is really insulting because I'll tell you what I said when Mayor Cox said we should arrange a meeting with that group you indicated. I told her it was a waste of time because we've met with those people many times and they can come up with facts and figures that don't even correlate to this area. When it comes to the chemo side of things, I realize it's a safety issue. And it's always come back to me that you need to train people here to do it. My response to that is that we have perfectly healthy people and other centers close to here that can come over and do those services 1 or 2 days a week in our hospital and have the people that are sick be able to go take a short trip and get their chemo treatments here instead of the sick people having to travel and the healthy people sitting in a hospital someplace else. And that's the same again with the scheduled surgeries and those too, is that we have the facility here, we should be doing those things here. And if people need that service, they can come to High Prairie and get it done. If you want to take the pressure off the big cities, bring them up here. It's the same distance. Doesn't matter which way you're traveling. If you're to tell somebody from Edmonton that they have to come to High Prairie and have dialysis, you'd be run right out of the city. But except when you live in the north, you're expected to have to do that travel. And that's not fair. When you talk about people, again, when they get into dialysis, and they said when they get into that type of dialysis, it's a very short life. most of that's generated by the fact that they have to travel to get those services. 3 times a week, a minimum of 4 hours on the road, 3 times a week. It's not only a burden to the person that's sick with the dialysis, the families of those people suffer greatly. And that's why a lot of them just decide that they're not going anymore. And to me, it may be a short lifespan, but we can make it better by having the services here, or as close as we can get to them. I realize we can't get within, an hour of everybody, but we can certainly get closer by having those services here. They don't have to travel out of here. And the building, when you're talking about building that, you talked to George about the length of time, people that have spent hours and years on this. Dr. Loughlin was one of the first pioneers of getting the new hospital here. And he put in hours and hours on that project. And back to their clinic, I still think, I know you've got lots of rules and regulations, but this community feels that AHS owes that clinic the courtesy of getting them a 1 or 2 more doctors in there for whatever reason. We don't have to have those doctors here. If they want those 2 people, then we should be going out of our way to get those 2 people there. Because and you can't say you're going to set a precedent, because I don't think there's anywhere else in this province that you're going to find 2 doctors that have put in over 70 years of service in one community. Nobody else will be able to claim that if you're scared of setting a precedent by breaking a rule or bending the rules. So again, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and giving me a chance to vent again, so thank you.
I just hope, Dr. Owen, you listen to what Matthews has to say. Really listen.
Listen to what everyone has to say, not just council and the Reeve and the mayor.
The last little bit.
It speaks well. But also would just want to say, there's also been lots of valuable input. Dr. Edwards, multiple other people that have spoken as well. And again, that is an important part of being here, is to listen and be able to take that away. So appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for all in the gallery for coming out, and we appreciate the fact that you've listened for over 3 hours to our and I know that we have learned a lot about recruitment also. So thank you, and we're going to be watching Recruitment. It's one of our major TV shows now. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.